Hey there all, my name is Liz Wright and I am a professor of psychology at Northwest Vista College in San Antonio, Texas. This series of videos is for my child psychology class. In this video we will be talking about physical development for middle childhood. So we're talking about our 6 to 12s and how these guys and girls and folks are developing. So couple things here. We will notice that the growth in general for these folks is typically more slow and steady. So we're not usually going to wake up one morning and be like, "Did you get taller?" Things like that. What we will notice is that if maybe we measure their height at the beginning of the summer and the end of the summer, we might see a change in growth that way through what we call growth spurts. So growth spurts will happen throughout this time period. You'll see that maybe your child starts eating more or is experiencing growth pains, especially in legs, back area, because of, and it can be anywhere, it can be, hands, feet, that sort of stuff. Because of the fact that their bodies are growing, and that can be painful. Usually, if it becomes so painful that it interrupts their sleep, then we can give them some children's pain medication, small amounts of it. I would suggest talking to your doctor before doing that, but that's what we were told in terms of growth spurts throughout this time period. We will see that because of brain changes that are going on, because of increased myelinization, which we've talked about before, that's, more myelin that is coding the axons that are sending the messages in the brain. We will see that children's reaction times are going to increase during this time period. We will see that they develop better critical thinking skills, which we will talk about in the next unit. They're better able to coordinate. They're better able to move more fluidly, especially if they're participating in some sort of activity such as, sports, things like that. It helps them to develop that fluidity of motion. And one thing that I can tell you is that a lot of kids that grow quickly uh, tend not to grow into their bodies as easily, if that makes sense. And it may make them less able to be fluid in terms of their motion. So, for example, my oldest son is 13. He's almost 14 now, and he is 6'5". And he's had multiple growth spurts where, 2 inches, 3 inches in like 2 months. And he's never really developed as much coordination in terms of being able to use his body effectively because of the fact that he was just kind of, I don't want to say constantly growing, but consistently growing. And my husband's the same way. My husband's 6'8". And so even in his 40s, when you watch motion, it doesn't appear to be as fluid as it would for someone that maybe didn't grow as quickly and had the opportunity to kind of grow into their body and learn how to be fluid with the body that they had, if that makes sense. This section also talks a lot about neurodivergence. So talking about brains that work differently. A lot of the things that we relate to neurodivergence, such as attention deficit disorder, or dyslexia or learning disabilities, all have that disability after them. And one thing that is really important for us as child psychologists and psychology scholars to focus on is also the the challenges that these folks are facing, but also the I don't want to say benefits, but the good parts or the strengths that these folks have as well. So if we go into educational psych, one thing that, if we're assessing a student for a learning disability, we want to focus on what the child's strengths are as opposed to, and what their challenges are, so that we can help the child and family to recognize where their strengths are, how we can capitalize on those strengths in order to assist the child with developing in the areas that they have challenges in. So, for example, if a child is diagnosed with autism, we want to figure out what their strengths are so that we can help the child use those strengths to work on the areas that they have challenges with, such as social skills or social communication, understanding other social skills, things like that. So in this unit, there is some discussion of ADHD, and we will talk about the 3 different types of ADHD. Some researchers will tell you that there's more types based upon looking at neurostructures and functions and what's going on in the brain when the brain attempts to attend, when the brain attempts to focus. So, for example, Dan Amen does a lot of research on looking at the brain through fMRI scans, which would be really cool. So looking at the functional MRIs of what is the brain doing when, what areas are lighting up, what areas are more active when we're asking you to remember, when we're asking you to imagine. It's a really cool research area if you're interested in brain stuff. And he has found 7 different types of ADHD. And I do have links to that information in the class content if you want to learn more about that. But typically, in terms of diagnosis, treatment, and treatment strategies, we talk about 3 different types. We talk about the inattentive type. So folks with the inattentive type are more likely to have challenges focusing on details, maybe focusing on remembering to capitalize the beginning of all sentences or use punctuation. They sometimes lose track of things that they need for activities because they weren't paying attention when they put it down somewhere. Attention is necessary in order to create new memories. And so I have one of my children with mixed inattentive hyperactive, which is the combined type, which is the 3rd type. And I don't know how many times per day he'll ask me, like, Mom, where's my this? Mom, where's my that? Where did I leave my such and such? And it can be overwhelming and it can be frustrating. And so one of my responses is, I want you to act like a detective and use your eyeballs and that big old brain of yours to look for anything that's out of place. Many times, folks with the inattentive type of ADHD have already looked for it, but for some reason, their brain did not register it when they did see it. So it can be useful to remind them to, switch on the focus and let's really go on a hunt for what we're looking for. What colors is it? What's going to make it stand out from the background of what it's on? Things like that. And then we have the hyperactive type. Hyperactive type, typically these kids are going to be, I always joke that they run instead of anything. They run instead of walking. They climb instead of, standing still. It's like there's this constant ball of energy. And so it can be really hard for them to sit still during school. It can be really hard for them to have, a rainy day inside where there's little activities to do. We've talked before about goodness of fit in terms of parenting and children. I do have challenges with my son who has the combined type because when he becomes hyperactive, I am not hyperactive at all. I am very much the person who's like, I would want to sit and chill and read a book 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so when I've got this, so much energy that he is stimming, meaning that he's doing some sort of stimulating behaviors that are releasing energy. And one of the things that he does right now is he makes music by smacking himself on the stomach and the face and the head. And so there's this like pattern that goes to it, which to my brain, which has autism, goes repetitive noise, stop. So it can be very challenging in terms of goodness with fit some days, because I'm like, you need to chill. And he's like, I've got energy. What are we going to do about it? So one of the things that I ended up Googling during the pandemic, especially, was like inside activities that, can release some energy for kids who have too much energy. And there's lots of really good ones out there, building an indoor obstacle course, blowing up a balloon and playing Keep It Up with the child, and just, different things like that, creating a bowling area. All of those can be, things that use up energy and aren't, too disrupting in terms of, if you feel as a parent like you don't want your whole house to turn into chaos, then there are some things that you can do that are not going to be hyper disrupting to the household. So we will talk about and look at ADHD in this unit. We will look at the treatments for ADHD. Some doctors will use stimulants in order to increase the functioning of the frontal lobe, in order to increase the ability for us to focus, so decreasing inattentiveness. And there are some new medications that are non-stimulant medications. We do find that stimulant medications tend to work better for younger children, but sometimes as children get older and move into their teens, stimulants aren't as useful. And this is a discussion that I've had with multiple psychiatrists recently, because the medications that my sons take are different because of the fact that they have different types of ADHD and different behaviors, but also because one is, maturation wise, one is older and is a teenager, whereas one's brain isn't as mature as the other one. So another learning challenge that is related to neurology is going to be dyslexia. And it's not, dyslexia isn't just, flipping letters around, but it's also having challenges relating to the reading, having challenges relating to the strength of the eyes in terms of reading. So a lot of kids with dyslexia recognize that it's challenging, and so they stop trying to do it. And so their ability to maintain reading on a task isn't as long as other kids, because of the fact that they have grown so frustrated over the years with their experience. So there are some strategies that we can use to help children with dyslexia, and then also we can, once we've put those strategies in place, then we can help them to increase the length of time on task slowly, so that they can feel more successful with their reading. Strategies that can help children and adults and college students with dyslexia, including having the reading read to them, which with so many colleges now offering ebooks, having the read it to me feature can be very beneficial. And then there's other options, such as using a bookmark, or a very particular bookmark that focuses the vision on a particular line of text. So it's almost like it's a ruler that has a line in the middle, and you move the line down so that you can specifically focus on that line of text. There's also an interesting new font that people are using in order to decrease the challenges of folks who experience dyslexia. So if you are a person who has dyslexia or know someone who does, ask them if they have checked out that font, because you can change, basically, copy and paste any wording or any writing into a document, change the font to that font, and it makes it easier for folks with dyslexia and also other neuroatypicalities to read. Um, we do have a plethora of learning disabilities that we can talk about in this chapter. We can talk about um, children who have challenges with their senses, so integrating sensory information with other sensory information, children who become overwhelmed with too much sensory information. We can talk about children who experience dyscalculia. So basically talking about challenges with math and numbers moving around. There's lots of different experiences that our children, we may start to recognize during this age group because of the fact that the expectations in the educational system are such that we start to realize, hey, this kid's having a challenge with what we're expecting them to do at this age group, and maybe it's because of some sort of LD or learning disability. So we also have lots of interesting communication disorders. Some children have trouble understanding different types of language. So, for example, sarcasm, or some children have difficulties with reading comprehension. So they can read very well, but when you ask them, okay, summarize for me what you just read, that's kind of the look you get. And it's just like, well, you were there, right? We read the whole thing together. And so if you ask them even specific questions, sometimes they will have trouble with that. I was reading The Little Prince with my younger son, who has comprehension challenges, and he could read the entire paragraph. And when we got to the entire paragraph, I asked him, I was like, okay, so um, so what did the boy want to be when he was a child? What did he want to be for a job or for a career? And he just kind of looked at me and he said, a pilot. And I was like, well, hold on. He became a pilot. I said, but when he was a child, when he was 6, what did he want to be when he became an adult? And he just kind of looked at me and I said, well, let's reread the paragraph. So we started rereading the paragraph, and it said, when I was 6, I wanted to be an artist. And so as soon as we got there, he was like, oh, he wanted to be an artist. And I was like, okay. So even, when the child is paying attention, sometimes there's difficulties with what the eyes have processed, what the brain has processed, and then being able to remember that and to summarize it back to people. There's going to be some interesting communication disorders in this chapter, such as apraxia and ataxia, which are related to specific areas of the brain. Some are related to neurodivergence, some are related to injuries sustained to the brain. So those are things that we're going to be talking about in this chapter. One of the final things that this chapter talks about is mainstreaming in terms of education. And what this means is that we want to provide children with the most inclusive classroom situation available to them. And so even if a child has a learning disability, we do not want to put them into just a specific or just a special education classroom all day, every day. What we might want to do is put them in a mainstream classroom, so non-special education classroom, for the areas where they are successful, and then pull them for special instruction when it comes to the content or the difficulties that they have. So if they have challenges specifically in math, then during math class, we might have another teacher or a teaching assistant or a special education collaboration teacher come in and work specifically with the children in that mainstreamed class who have difficulties with math, or we may bring the child into a special education classroom setting just for that class. Or if the child has multiple challenges, then we may have them in mainstream classes for social studies, science, and art, whereas they are in special education or more applied classes for math and reading, things like that. So the goal would be to have our children be in the classes that they're capable of being in and that they will be successful in. And so if that means that a child has, one class where they are in need of extra help, where they're in need of extra support, then maybe we either group them together with a special education collaboration teacher during that class time, or we, pull them from the classroom setting to have specialized instruction, and then they're in mainstream classes for the rest of their classes. It's going to be different based upon the availability of your school system. And it may be different based upon a child's abilities and based upon a child's grade level as well. Some schools, because they are so small, don't have as many opportunities for children with learning disabilities. And that is why it's going to be really important for parents to advocate for those children, to work with the school system so that the school system is providing them with the best education possible, even if that means transferring out of the school that they're assigned to, because the school that they're assigned to does not provide the activities or instruction that they need. Okay, so that is our short introduction to middle childhood physical abilities. Our next topic will be middle childhood cognitive abilities. So we'll be looking at thinking skills, we'll be looking at their understanding of the world, their interests in the world, and how they learn about stuff. It's very interesting to see the jumps, the cognitive jumps, or the cognitive differences between, for example, third and fourth grade, fourth and fifth grade. I've talked to a lot of teachers that say, when they leave third grade for the summer and they come in for fourth grade, when they leave fourth grade for the summer and they come in for fifth grade, there's a noticeable difference in the things that we can expect them to be able to understand cognitively. So it's a really interesting age group in terms of their cognitive development, and we will go there next. Thanks.